Listen to these two sentences. Sentence 1. My sister is a doctor. She lives in London. Sentence 2. My sister, who lives in London, is a doctor. The second sentence sounds much more fluent and sophisticated, right? That magic is created by a relative clause, one of the most powerful tools for building better, more interesting sentences in English. It's the #1 skill that will take your writing and speaking from a beginner to an intermediate level. And today, we are going to master it. Welcome back to our advanced series, English Grammar Unlocked. I'm your host, Scarlett. Today, we are learning the secret to moving from simple sentences to complex, elegant ones. Relative clauses. In this episode, we will turn this grammar lesson into a fun family party. First, we will join a family reunion and meet different relatives to understand the two crucial types of relative clauses. Second, we will master 10 essential vocabulary words for describing people and grammar. And finally, for our language focus, we will break down the rules of these clauses, including the all-important comma that can completely change the meaning of your sentence. Now, are you ready to meet the family? First, let's solve the biggest puzzle. How do you give essential, necessary information without starting a new sentence? Let's meet some of my cousins to find out. Part 1. Identifying people in a crowd. Defining relative clauses. Our story today takes place at a big, noisy, and wonderful family reunion. Imagine we are standing in a large living room, filled with people talking and laughing. There are so many people here. It can be confusing. I need to explain to you who is who. You see those 3 women talking over there by the fireplace? The woman who is wearing the red dress is my Aunt Maria. The man that she is talking to is my Uncle David. And the little dog that is sitting by the door is their new puppy, Max. Let's pause our party for a moment. The phrases, who is wearing the red dress, that she is talking to, and that is sitting by the door, are called defining relative clauses. Their job is to provide essential information. The information is necessary. Without this information, you would not know which woman, which man, or which dog I am talking about. If I just said, the woman is my Aunt Maria, you would ask, which woman? The clause defines the noun. Now, let's look at the grammar. There are 2 very important rules for these clauses. First, we do not use commas. The essential information is connected directly to the noun without any pause. Second, for people, you can use the word WHO. For things or animals, you can use the word which, but in most cases, especially in conversation, you can use the very flexible word that for both people and things. The woman that is wearing the red dress is also correct and very common. This type of clause is the most common way we give specific information in English. Okay, we now know how to identify specific people in a crowd. But what if we already know who someone is, and we just want to add some extra, interesting information about them? For that, we need a different kind of magic and a very, very important punctuation mark. Part 2. Adding extra information. Non-defining relative clauses. Let's continue walking around the party. Now, I want to introduce you to some people who are very close to me. You don't need extra information to know who they are, because there is only one of them. Over there, that's my father, who is a fantastic cook. He is talking to my oldest brother, Mark, who lives in Canada. Mark's wife, Sarah, who, by the way, is an amazing lawyer, is holding their new baby. And that is my grandmother, whose stories are always the most interesting at any party. Let's pause again. These new clauses, who is a fantastic cook, who lives in Canada, who is an amazing lawyer, and whose stories are always the most interesting, are called non-defining relative clauses. Their job is to provide extra, non-essential information. The information is like a fun fact, a little bonus for the listener. How do we know it's non-essential? Try removing the clause from the sentence. My father is talking to my oldest brother, Mark. Does this sentence still make perfect sense? Yes. We still know exactly who I am talking about. We don't need the information that my father is a good cook for the sentence to work. This is the key difference. Defining clauses are necessary. Non-defining clauses are extra. Now for the grammar rules, which are very important here. First, you must use commas to separate the extra information. The commas act like little walls, showing that the information inside is just a side note. Second, you cannot use the word that in non-defining clauses. You must use WHO for people and which for things. This is a very common mistake for learners, so it's a great rule to remember. You also use whose to show possession. We've met the family and learned the two main types of clauses. Now, are you ready to become a grammar expert? Let's break down the specific language tools we need to build these sophisticated sentences ourselves. Part 3. Language focus. First, let's master our 10 new vocabulary words for today's lesson. Our first phrase is relative clause. A relative clause is a part of a sentence that starts with a relative pronoun like who, which, or that, and it gives more information about a noun. For example, today's lesson is all about relative clauses. Our second word is defining. In grammar, defining means giving essential information to identify the noun you are talking about. For example, in the man who lives next door, the clause is defining. Another example is, we need a clear definition of the project goals. Our third phrase is non-defining. Non-defining means giving extra, non-essential information about a noun. For example, in my father, who is a doctor, the clause is non-defining. Next, we have essential. Essential means absolutely necessary or extremely important. For example, a defining clause gives essential information. Another example is, good communication is essential for a healthy relationship. Our fifth word is extra. Extra means additional, or more than is usual or necessary. For example, a non-defining clause gives extra information. Another example is, would you like extra cheese on your pizza? The sixth word is reunion. A reunion is a social event for people who have been apart for a long time. For example, our story today takes place at a family reunion. Another example is, I am excited for my 10-year high school reunion. Our seventh word is cousin. A cousin is the child of your uncle or aunt. For example, I have many cousins who live all over the country. Another example is, my cousin and I are the same age. Next, we have sibling. A sibling is a brother or a sister. For example, do you have any siblings? Another example is, she gets along very well with her siblings. Our ninth word is to introduce. To introduce means to present a person by name to another person. For example, at the party, I will introduce you to my parents. Another example is, he introduced his new girlfriend to his friends. And our final word is comma. A comma is the punctuation mark that looks like this. It is used to separate parts of a sentence. For example, you must use commas with non-defining relative clauses. Another example is, please use a comma before the word but. Now for our grammar focus. Defining versus non-defining relative clauses. Let's make a final, clear comparison chart. For defining relative clauses, their job is to give essential information. They have no commas, and you can use the words who, which, or that. Example, the book that is on the table is mine. For non-defining relative clauses, their job is to give extra information. You must use commas, and you can only use the words who, which, or whose. You cannot use that. Example, my favorite book, which is on the table, is very old. You've learned the theory, you've seen the examples, and now it's time for the workout. How can we practice this sophisticated skill in our everyday English? Here are your practice tips. Part 4. Practice tips for the 4 skills. For listening, watch an interview with a celebrity you admire. When they talk about a person, maybe their director, their co-star, or their family member, Listen carefully for the relative clauses. Do you hear a small pause? That pause is a comma, which means it's a non-defining clause, giving extra information. For speaking, tell your AI tutor about 2 people in your family using your voice. Your challenge is to use 1 defining clause and 1 non-defining clause. For example, the cousin who lives near me is a student. My father, who is a great cook, loves to watch movies. For reading, find a news article about a person. Newspaper articles are full of non-defining relative clauses that give extra information about people, places, and events. Read an article and highlight all the clauses you can find. And for writing, this is a perfect exercise for your journal. Write a short paragraph describing your best friend. First, identify them with a defining clause. Then, add extra information with a non-defining clause. For example, I have a friend who I met in college. Her name is Anna, who is one of the funniest people I know. Part 5. Your next action. Today, you have learned the number 1 skill for upgrading your English sentences. You are no longer limited to short, simple statements. You can now combine your ideas with elegance and sophistication, adding details and extra information just like a native speaker. This is a huge step in your journey to fluency. As we conclude, let's quickly summarize our lesson today. First, we joined a family reunion and learned the crucial difference between the 2 types of relative clauses. Defining clauses are essential and have no commas. Non-defining clauses are extra and must have commas. We also learned 10 essential vocabulary words for this topic. As a review, those words were relative clause, defining, non-defining, essential, extra, reunion, cousin, sibling, to introduce, and comma. Now, I have a final question for you. Tell me about a person you know using a relative clause. For example, I have a friend who loves to travel. Let's practice using defining relative clauses in the comments section below. If you are committed to making this mindset a part of your life, show your energy by smashing that like button. Be a hero for a friend by sharing this video with someone you know who wants to improve their writing. And to lock in your commitment to learning, subscribe and smash that notification bell so you don't miss our next workout. Remember, building better sentences is how you build a better connection with the world. Until next time, take care and happy learning.